Hello, YouTubers, friends, compatriots, hooligan, shills, desolate, stars, peasants, vassals, propagandists, propagandis, improper gandis. I'm a useful idiot. Today I want to talk about this report from the Government Accounting Office. It talked about the money spent by the government on propaganda overseas. And I was a little surprised by the figures. And of course, this doesn't include the amount of money that the United States government pays for propaganda within the United States, but that's a topic for another video, as I like to say. But what we find out is that in the last 10 years, in the Iraq and Afghanistan theaters, the government, the Pentagon particularly, has spent $580 million a year on propaganda. And to be fair, the number has been going down over the years. So at the height of those two wars, the Pentagon was spending $580 million a year, which is just staggering in itself. But as it turns out, we have a unit called the Military Information Support Operations, or MISO. And it operates in 22 countries. And these same efforts are extended over areas of Southeast Asia and South America. So I don't have the figures. Normally I would have done a little extra research to come up with the numbers for how much more we're spending. But just think about it. So we have two war zones in Afghanistan and Iraq, and let's say for 4 years we're spending $580 million a year on propaganda. And then the number now is last year I think was $54 million. So still, when you add that all up, it's a pretty staggering number. And then that's just two countries. So to think that we're doing it in 20 more countries, extending across Southeast Asia and South America, paints a picture of a program with a huge budget. But of course, as most government programs, and this one is no exception, the Government Accounting Office pointed out that it, A, is inadequately tracked, B, impact is unclear, and C, they don't know who the audience they target is. So, and of course, the methods used are so primitive. I think they're still living in the Cold War. They're basically setting up websites, dropping leaflets, doing broadcasts on the radio and television, and then, of course, as we know, finding out in Iraq that they publish fake articles in newspapers in Iraq and Afghanistan. So that's what we get for $580 million a year, plus all the propaganda to Southeast Asia and South America. And the intended purpose, by their own documentation, is to change foreigners' attitudes and behaviors in support of the U.S. government. I hate to break it to this giant bureaucracy that we have that analyzes these things, but I think that most people in that region think more about drone strikes and reading about drone strikes and thinking about the deformed children being born in Fallujah from uranium, depleted uranium rounds, and the fact that America's been in Iraq and Afghanistan for 10 years. They kind of think about more about stuff like that rather than trying to make them support the U.S. government. Seems like a long shot, and that's a lot of money to be spent on a long shot. And of course, when this report comes out, the government spokesman, as usual, says, "Oh, we've upgraded and addressed all of those issues." And of course, they have addressed none. Nothing's changed, and it's just money flushed down the crapper. And to expand on the summary I did earlier, the Government Accounting Office found 3 weaknesses in tracking specifically. 1, the Pentagon and Congress do not have the complete picture of the efforts and the funding used to pay for the progress. So let me interpret that into layman's terms. Basically means that all of our Congress and the Pentagon really don't know shit about what these efforts involve, and they don't really care where the money comes from, so they just know a lot gets spent. Then, number 2, the Pentagon can't measure the effects of propaganda programs well enough to know where to allocate funding. To interpret that into layman's term, they're basically saying they just throw money at it and throw mud on the wall and see if it sticks. And if it's not working, they throw more money at it. Then last, number 3, lacking goals, the Pentagon does not have reasonable assurance that it is putting resources into countries that need it. So they don't really have any strategy. They just do it because they can. And to make matters worse, in this article, in this Government Accounting Office piece, in this report, it had one little disturbing footnote, and that was the fact that it said, quote, with special operations troops deployed to embassies to erode support for violent extremist ideologies, unquote. So I can laugh at the efforts of the government to use these methods to win the hearts and minds of our cultures around the world, but I think that most of these cultures around the world are probably aware that we have special operations troops deployed in embassies, and of course that makes the whole presence of embassies a lot more complex and loaded and ripe for the potential for, say, an attack. But this is no surprise to those who have been paying attention to the details. We know gun running has been going on in Benghazi, and everyone in Benghazi knows it, but most Americans are not aware of that. But so here is the Government Accounting Office, just a little slip talking about special operations troops deployed in embassies to distribute this kind of propaganda to the local population. So just for fun, I'll attach a couple of my older videos about how the government and the military use propaganda against the United States. So this falls well in line with that, although I'm sure